More clashes Friday night between supporters and opponents of Donald Trump outside one of the candidates' rallies in San Diego. The city's police department said 35 people were arrested during the protests. Officers were forced to shove back demonstrators, in some cases to keep control. Jon Allen, a columnist with Roll Call, is here with me today. Jon, thanks for joining us on this Saturday. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you here. I want to ask you first about these heated gatherings that seem to be kicking off every time, especially after he wraps up an event. What is this doing to his image?
Well, I think it is creating a sort of chaos that may even benefit him in a way. That is to say, if you go back to 1968, the Democratic Convention, where there were riots, the Republican candidate who talked about law and order did very well, Richard Nixon. And I think that in some ways, Donald Trump may try to take advantage of the chaos, some of it from people who are against him, some of it from people who are for him. As we see, the groups of protesters, demonstrators, and Trump supporters sort of clash together.
I'm curious, though, Jon, what the Republican leadership is saying about this. I mean, this is not a good look for the Republican Party, is it? Are they concerned?
Well, I think there's definite concern about the message that is bringing some of this violence along. So you see Donald Trump earlier in the campaign cycle encouraging people to punch protesters inside his arena. I think some of the language about particular groups, whether you're talking about Mexicans, if you're talking about Muslim Americans, Muslims abroad who might want to come here, refugees. I think the Republican Party in Washington doesn't want any of that message, but they now have to live with it, and they've got to live with Donald Trump, and they're going to have to live with some of this this anxiety and anger that's being brought around to his events, both by the people who support him and those who are opposed to him. The American electorate is very angry right now, and we're seeing some of that play out.
In his speech on Friday, Trump made some choice remarks about a judge who's involved with a Trump University suit. Let's take a listen.
I have a judge who is a hater of Donald Trump, a hater. He's a hater. His name is Gonzalo Curiel. So what happens is the judge, who happens to be, we believe, Mexican, which is great. I think that's fine. You know what? I think the Mexicans are going to end up loving Donald Trump when I give all these jobs, okay?
You know, we saw Mexican flags outside of his rallies or protesters against him. What does that do for, is it just adding more fuel to the fire here?
Oh, absolutely. And in particular, when he starts naming the judge, this is a way of pointing his angriest and most vocal supporters at a sitting judge. We've seen harassment of people by Trump supporters online and over email, and I think he's trying to ratchet that up. I think he's trying to intimidate the judge in his case.
I was just wondering, why now? Like, why is he mentioning this judge? He made such a big spiel about this. Why is he doing that?
I think for just that reason. I think basically to get the judge to back off, to get the judge to be intimidated, to be afraid to rule against Donald Trump. Perhaps to get a situation where he gets another judge if he thinks this judge isn't favorable. It's an unusual thing to have a presidential candidate targeting a judge, but of course also an unusual thing to have a presidential candidate with a case before a judge. This is only going to rile up Trump supporters. Give
me your look ahead. What are you looking for on the campaign trail in the week ahead?
I think what will be interesting in this coming week is the Democratic campaign in California. You've got Bernie Sanders trying to win that state. You've seen polls that have shown it closing. The last one, Hillary Clinton was up 2 percentage points. Most of the Democrats want Bernie Sanders to go away. They want him to start deciding that Hillary Clinton has won the nomination and getting in her camp and trying to drive voters to her rather than splitting them away from her. And I think Bernie Sanders' performance on June 7th in the primary and what happens in the lead up to that is sort of an interesting storyline for the unification of the Democratic Party. The longer it takes Democrats to get unified, the more Trump has an open run to get his party behind him.
Trump had some disappointing news for a lot of people out in America. On Friday, he said he's not going to debate Bernie Sanders. Let's take a listen to that.
Now, I heard that he was going to debate me, and then I heard that he was not going to debate me, and I heard that he was going to debate me, and now you're telling me that he is not going to debate me. Well, I hope that he changes his mind again. I mean, Mr. Trump is known to change his mind many times in a day. And I would, Trump goes around, he's a bully, he's a big, tough guy. Well, Mr. Trump, what are you afraid of?
What are you afraid of, huh? The hashtag Chicken Trump is actually, Trump's usually the one giving nicknames, but right. Chicken Trump trending on Twitter Friday night. Could this possibly hurt him from backing down?
Yeah, I think it could hurt him a little bit. I mean, this is a situation where Donald Trump's mouth got in front of his best politics. There's nothing to be gained for him debating Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is not going to be the Democratic nominee. And so Trump could only lose by debating this guy, essentially punching down in a debate. But he got out there and his bravado got out there, and then he was pinned into maybe doing the debate. And now he looks like he's backing off, like he's scared of Bernie Sanders, that Bernie Sanders might be able to beat him. I think you're going to continue to see some of this name calling go on. It is helpful to Hillary Clinton if Bernie Sanders supporters are doing the name calling against Donald Trump. That's extremely helpful to her. Whether or not the Sanders people want that to be the case, that's what's going on. I think, the other thing, as you, I think, alluded to, is there was this huge sound after Donald Trump released his statement saying that he wasn't going to debate Bernie Sanders, and it was the shattering of journalists' collective heart into a million pieces on the floor. Because I think every journalist in the world was looking for this debate, as were many, many millions more Americans. The Super Bowl of debates, The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, The Apprentice, and Big Brother rolled into one, and it was going to be an incredible event. To borrow from Donald Trump, it would have been huge.
It would have been huge. I'm still holding out hope, John.
I mean, I would love to see it. In fact, even if neither one of them ends up winning the presidency, it would be interesting to see Donald Trump debate Bernie Sanders, just a live pay-per-view event.
I'd pay for that. I certainly would. I want to talk money before you go. The first big RNC fundraiser that Donald Trump held, I think it raised something like $7 million on Wednesday. It seems like a lot, but what does Donald Trump's fundraising really mean right now, especially as we come up to November?
I think it's very important for him to be able to hit Republican Party traditional donors, the big dollar donors. We've seen that Donald Trump has some support at the grassroots level. He obviously doesn't want to spend his own money for something as big as a president, the general election, which could cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
He says that the money is going to help the Republicans. Do you buy that? I mean, he's going to obviously...
I mean, he cares about one Republican more than the rest of them. But I think that's true on the Democratic side, too. You hear Hillary Clinton talking about how she's raising money for other Democrats, and she is, but there's one Democrat she cares the most about.
All right. Jon Allen, thank you so much for joining us.
So good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thank you.